Chapter 8, Lesson 2. Main Ideas. Religion. The Japanese adopted the forms of Buddhism that best met their needs. Culture. The Japanese developed unique forms of literature and drama. Culture. The Japanese arts reflected a love of natural beauty. Growth of Japanese culture. Build on what you know. As you learned, Japan was influenced by Chinese culture, but the genius of the Japanese was their ability to adapt foreign customs and ideas to meet their own needs. A very important Chinese influence was Buddhism. Japanese forms of Buddhism. Essential question: how did the Japanese adapt Buddhism? Buddhism began in India in the 500s BC. It was based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama. Buddhism spread to China and then Korea. It arrived in Japan in the AD 500s. Buddhism spreads in Japan. Because Buddhism had the support of Prince Shotoku, it spread rapidly in Japan. It did not replace Japan's ancient Shinto religion, but was practiced alongside it. Buddhism had a powerful influence on Japanese culture. It was popular first with the nobility and later with the common people. The Buddhist belief that peace and happiness could be gained by leading a life of virtue and wisdom appealed to many. Different forms or sects of Buddhism developed in Japan over the centuries. Tendai Buddhism focused on the intensive study of texts. Shingon attracted followers who appreciated its complex rituals. Amida, or Pure Land, included a belief that people might have salvation in a pure land after their death. Zen held that something precious and divine exists in each person. Zen Buddhism. Some Buddhist sects flourished while others died out. The Japanese adopted the forms whose beliefs and practices best met their preferences and needs. Beginning in the 1100s, Zen became more and more common. It put emphasis on self-discipline, simplicity, and meditation. In fact, the word Zen means meditation. Followers believed that quiet reflection was more useful than performing ceremonies or studying scriptures. In some ways, Zen was very simple. It focused on the individual's attempt to achieve inner peace rather than the idea of salvation. As a major school of Buddhism, Zen had a great influence on Japanese culture. Samurai favored it because they thought it would give them inner peace and help them in battle. Some artists liked its combination of simplicity and boldness. They reflected these qualities in drawings by using just black ink and making strong, dark lines. Zen later spread to other countries and became popular in the West. A golden age of literature and drama. Essential question: what is unique about Japanese literature and drama? A great period of literature and Japanese history began in the 800s. People today still read diaries, essays, and novels written at this time. Japanese writing systems. Another aspect of China's culture that Japan adopted was its writing system. By about 400, the Japanese had begun using Chinese characters to write Japanese words. Like the Chinese, the Japanese used characters to stand for specific objects, actions, or ideas. Later, they also used characters to stand for certain sounds. These characters worked like letters or syllables in English. Today, Japanese writing includes both letters and characters. While Japanese writing was influenced by China, its language is related to that of Korea. You will read about Korea in Lesson 4. Japanese drama. Japan's long tradition of drama dates back to the 600s. It began with people performing Shinto dances at religious shrines. Then in the 1300s, actors developed a special type of drama called no. No plays were often retellings of legends and folk tales. Actors wore painted wooden masks to show various emotions and used gestures, costumes, and music to tell the story. Most no actors were men. the plays were performed for both upper classes and common people. In the early 1600s, another style of drama called kabuki developed. It combined melodramatic singing and dancing with elaborate costumes and heavy makeup. This type of drama was more informal than No. Its themes often dealt with common people. Kabuki was and still is performed by men. Both No and kabuki remain popular today. The Tell of Genji. In the early 800s, Japan ended diplomatic relations with China. Some Japanese leaders felt that they had learned enough from the Chinese. China's influence remained, but Japan developed its own cultural traditions. This was especially true in literature. One of Japan's finest writers was Lady Murasaki Shikibu. She lived at the emperor's court in the early 1000s. Murasaki wrote The Tale of Genji, a book about the life of a prince in the imperial court. Her book is important in the development of literature. Earlier books in Japan and elsewhere either retold old myths or were collections of stories. Genji is a long, realistic story focused on one individual. These characteristics make it the world's first important novel. Japanese poetry. Japanese poets often wrote about the sadness of rejected love or the beauty of nature. Some of the most popular Japanese poems are very short compared to the poetry of other countries. One shorter form of poetry is called haiku. It has just 17 syllables, 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. Matsuo Basho, who lived in the 1600s, was a great haiku poet. He wrote poems that had the quiet, reflective spirit of Zen, such as this one about a pond. An old, silent pond. Into the pond a frog jumps. Splash! Silence again. Distinctive Japanese arts. Essential question. What themes are reflected in Japanese arts? 2 themes often expressed in Japanese literature and drama are simplicity and a love of natural beauty. These themes also appear in many forms of Japanese art. Calligraphy and painting. Like the Chinese, the Japanese wrote with brushes and ink on paper. They considered writing a way to express beauty. Calligraphy is the art of beautiful writing. Each character is painted in a set order of brush strokes, but calligraphers vary the sizes and shapes of characters to suggest different meanings. Brush painting with ink on paper scrolls and silk began in the 600s. Typical Japanese designs are very detailed. They depict landscapes, historical events, and daily life. Sometimes a short description is written on the art itself. Flower arranging and gardening. The art of flower arranging was another tradition that Buddhists brought to Japan. People emphasized simple arrangements. They tried to highlight the natural beauty of flowers. Bonsai is the art of growing miniature trees or shrubs in small pots or trays. Landscape gardeners also tried to create places that would show the beauty of nature. Zen-inspired gardens are designed to help people think quietly. These gardens are arranged with rocks and pathways and few flowers or trees. Gardening and flower arranging remain important art forms in Japan today. Lesson summary. Several forms of Buddhism were adopted in Japan, and Zen became one of the most popular. No, kabuki, and haiku are distinctive forms of drama and literature that developed in Japan. Japanese art shows a love of natural beauty. Why it matters now. The Japanese adopted ideas and developed distinctive cultural practices that are an important part of Japanese life today.